Ever wondered what's inside a 90s Japanese HKS muffler? I really haven't, to be honest, but I got a good opportunity to see what was kind of going on with the R&D of a 90s Japanese muffler because I came across a cheap one on Facebook Marketplace. It was $100. It looked pretty crap. The exhaust pipe was completely rusted through, and it was actually assess the muffler itself, see whether I can fix it up. And it started off being quite a piece of crap. It was completely rusted through. I'll put a pic of kind of where it started-ish. Bear in mind, in this pic actually I've started cleaning up the exhaust tip just to see if I could fix it, and it kind of came up pretty nice, and it made me think like this can actually be a salvageable part. So going off that, I started cleaning it up. I noticed as I was moving the muffler around to kind of like clean different areas, the packing inside was completely shot. I could see when I turned it on its tip, bits of the perforated tube before that. When I turned it back around, it sounded like a maraca basically. It was shaking around, stuff in there was loose. And doing a bit of research into this actual muffler, I noticed that it's a very common problem with this Super Dragon muffler. The way that the actual loadless barrel was designed basically meant that over time, once the perforated tube started rusting out, you'd start get packing coming through, the perforated tube would crumble and disintegrate, and you'd see kind of instances of kind of things flying out the back of those mufflers over time. And given it's a 30-year-old muffler, it's not an unreasonable thing to assume that you're going to get one that's pretty shot. So I think this might be something that might be of benefit to other people as well. Hopefully that this can be something that ultimately serves as a manual for either you guys to try this yourself, or maybe I can try it for you. And I'm hoping that this actually improves the overall performance of the muffler too, because there are some certain features in this muffler that I think are very interesting. It was something that I was very surprised to find, to be honest, in a performance-oriented muffler. This might have been done for reasons beyond just pure performance. It might have been done as a compromise on sound, a few other things like that. So I'm very curious to actually see what happens when you try to re-engineer a muffler like this and actually turn it into something that essentially makes it a better version in one way. Maybe it detracts from the muffler itself, but it's something that I'm really interested to explore and actually go along this journey. So I'm hoping that through this we can actually get to a solution and I can actually share it with you guys.
So this here is the muffler shell. It's pretty munted. It's all dinged up on the bottom. There's a dent there. Exhaust tip scratched. There's a bit of pitting here and there, but I picked it up so cheap that I couldn't resist. It's actually cleaned up a lot better from what it was before. So if you actually look at the picture from earlier, as you can see, it's still got the etching pretty neat there. Like everything is cleaned up relatively well. The parts that you're going to see are going to be mad. At the moment, it's just a shell. So I've actually pulled out the actual baffling, the restrictor, and the steel balls. All that's here. So this is actually what came out of the muffler, which is insane to me. This piece here is actually wild. It goes from a 2.5 inch, restricts down to a 1.75 inch, and that sits inside the tip of the muffler. I'll actually put a picture of how it sits in there before. So I knocked that out and I was shocked. This was what was left of the actual perforated tube, and it's just falling apart, honestly. This thing is just wrecked, properly done. Like bits of it are like falling off, it's rusted. This is the stuff that rattled in the exhaust itself. These exhaust balls here, pretty much, you can see where the actual exhaust gas failed, the baffling failed, essentially. Closer towards the inlet of the exhaust it failed, and then towards the end it was alright. Yeah, pretty much, and this is the pipe that kind of came with it. It's mild steel. Clearly this has been sitting for a long time. You can see it's actually starting to split at the seams. Yeah, not great. So that's the 2.5 inch system. So the first step of this muffler was actually to basically cut a hole, make it an actual true 3-inch muffler. So you can kind of actually see in there, that's the original packing that used to be in there. So that's all sitting in there. This is actually what I'm going to replace it with. So step one, I got this perforated tube for like $20, stainless steel. Should do me just fine. One thing I like about it is it's a continuous piece, so the actual kind of rolled sheet has been welded along the seam, whereas this was actually, if you look at it, you can see it's just a overlapped kind of coil, and you can open and close it. I think that would also probably aid in making sure it doesn't rattle as much, especially when things like this happen where it just completely rots through. Rather than this piece here where it restricts down, I've already welded this up before, but just a conical stainless steel piece. Pretty rough at the moment, I'll clean it up, but basically this piece here is going to sit on the actual 3-inch part like that itself, and then this will actually fit in under and butt up against there. And the plan will be to actually weld, kind of like stitch weld into there. It's going to be tricky, but into this tip itself. So once I do that, I'm hoping I can actually get this perforated tube section finished. But another thing is, you saw this just come out of the actual exhaust itself. This is the original packing. So HKS in the 90s ran this like fragmented fiberglass matte packing, and although it's okay, the problem is it starts to detach and then come loose. So what I'm going to replace that glass packing with this long strand continuous glass fiber packing. HKS uses this thing called Advantex glass fiber. I found a glass fiber that sits similar to that. Similar kind of density, same sort of weave pattern, and I'm hoping that I can use that in this muffler itself, and hopefully that can actually result in something that sounds relatively decent. There's things that I'm not going to be able to fix, like all of this, like it's not going to get sorted anytime soon. It looks worse with the shadow on it, but honestly, like considering the rest of the muffler, like, and the price I paid, which was like less than $100, I'll take it. Hopefully this will actually, by the end of this, for about $200 of cost, a few parts, a bit of labor from my end, I'm hoping that all this can come together and actually make a genuinely decent 3-inch exhaust system that looks relatively decent. So hopefully this works. So I started welding that conical tube onto the perforated muffler section. It's really hard to weld because it's all these tiny perforations, obviously. So I'm kind of going quite slow. I'm trying to get some heat into it so it doesn't actually split, but also I'm trying to be extra cautious about blowing holes through. I already have, as you can see, and it looks like shit. But I'll clean it up a bit after. I'll make sure the interior of it's actually nice and smooth, so it actually doesn't really hinder kind of like flow or anything like that. And I'm hoping come to this point I can get the fiberglass matting into the exhaust barrel itself, then put this through and just see if I can make it work without having to pull the end cap off the muffler itself. Talk about the end cap, what I'm referring to is the back side of this muffler has a factory weld that runs across the entire perimeter of the or circumference of this barrel. Obviously for kind of assembly purposes, the way this would have been packed was that all these components here would be kind of in a sub-assembly in itself. This cap would then slip over the top, and then that bottom would be welded with the actual tailpipe attached to the end of it. I'm trying to keep it's pretty ridiculous to do this, but I'm trying to keep the original kind of muffler section itself per se. I'm just trying to modify that back section here that you don't really see. If I can make this work where I can just slip the actual tube through, weld over the top in there, and then actually weld that outside perimeter, if I can get that going, I'll be very happy, but I am preparing for potentially having to cut this open and then do it that way. So I've just gone ahead and welded this conical piece onto this tube here. Now the idea with this tube is that this will slip stuff underneath the exhaust and come onto the tip, and then I'll be welding basically this outside diameter onto the inner diameter of that tube itself. I'll show you what I mean. I'm hoping this works, but basically this slips into there. Wait a sec. Try to get it in. So it goes in. through. So that's in there now. Let's head. And if you can see in there, so that's situated where it needs to be. Turn the flash on so you can see. So that's in where it needs to be. Tube more or less done. Now it's time to look into the packing. And I don't know if you can see in there. Let me turn the torch on. There is packing in there, but quite a bit of it's just kind of like come loose and just flown out. So I did try a shitty attempt at trying to put it together, but that's shit. So I think what I'm actually going to do is, because that packing is relatively decent and it's got the form that I need, I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to actually fit the rest of this hollow section in this Advantex glass fiber packing. So what I'll do is I'll kind of like measure the distance from there to the kind of where the foam is consistent, fiberglass is consistent, sorry, and then just roll it in a way that allows me to have some sort of kind of dense spiral sort of packing that can kind of fit in this sort of way, and then I can actually fit my stainless steel balls through, and hopefully that can actually finish the actual packing side of things. It looks like it's promising. We'll see how we go. So I couldn't really film much of that because I'm kind of wearing a mask and this shit fucking has strands everywhere, but I've done that half packing. I'm very lucky I did that because I don't have enough to actually do the full packing. I'm pretty confident this will work a lot better than what's in there currently. Basically, there's just like, rather than having little tiny blocks of it like that, it's going to be one continuous sheet, and there's 2 sheets in there now. It was a bit of a pain just like putting my hand through it. If you can see, my hand just fits, so I was risking tetanus for this, but we got there in the end. Didn't need any cuts. It looks pretty good. Now the steps I'm looking at, this is going to be really challenging trying to get the steel balls in there, but what I'm thinking is I'll use this, which I made before, which is a 2.5 OD tube. That basically can fit through the front of the exhaust. I'll run that all the way down and it'll poke through here, and I'm going to just stretch those balls over the tube and then feed it in slowly. I think that's going to be the best way to do it, and then doing that, I'll get this perforated muffler section and feed that through while I pull that out. This is quite gnarly, but I'm trying to get these balls stuffed into there. My hands are pretty fucking filthy, but essentially the way I'm trying to do this is I'm feeding each ball one by one through here, and then I'm spreading it into that ball. So I'm kind of just putting one in and then just spreading it out. It's giving me mad flashbacks, but you know, got to do what you got to do. I really wish I filmed this, but basically this is completely packed now. It's actually running through really nicely. Excuse my hands, but basically what I did was this 2-inch pipe, I fed through this side and I stuffed each steel ball onto this, spread it and pushed it back. Then what I did was, from this side here, I taped essentially this 2-inch onto the merge, that kind of like conical section, and I just slowly kind of like pushed it in. And then ultimately it butt up really nicely in the middle there. So this is going to be the hardest part. We've got it in there. I need to basically weld, at least stitch that muffler barrel into that. I'm not sure how well that's going to go. I have cleaned it up as best as I can. Getting a freaking gun in there it's not great, to be honest, but I think anything will work for the time being. I'll see how I go. Can't really film much of this, but I'll report on it really well. So you can see, look, it's not perfect and it's quite rough, but you got to remember, look at how far up I'm welding in. I'm pretty much welding in like that and around. It's pretty difficult, but I'm really happy that even though this muffler is pretty rooted, welding in that method didn't actually add any heat discoloration or weld through on this part of the muffler. That's kind of why I chose to weld in, because you're actually welding probably about 10 mil below this actual weld seam here. So I'm really happy about that. It's actually turned out really well. Next step is actually to weld. You can't see, but that underside isn't welded yet. Once that's done, this muffler is more or less repacked and good to go. After that, I'm going to be TIG welding it back onto the Sylvia, and it's going to be my new axle back. So hopefully this repacking actually sounds pretty good, and if it does, like, I'm hoping it helps someone, or I'm able to help someone else actually basically restore their muffler more or less to a functional level. These mufflers are renowned for rusting out the actual perforating tube and then actually blowing out all the packing, so this is kind of a way to restore it. I'm really hoping I can find a way to improve the welding in there. But that being said, once this is kind of like running, and obviously with the SR behind it, it's going to be black in no time, so you're not going to see any of that. But yeah, pretty happy with that.
Bit of an update, but got the backside welded in. Not bad. Definitely had some issues, but it turned out okay. You can see in there. Neat. Straight through. I'm actually really keen. I'm excited to see this on the car.
That'll be exciting. Last, pretty much got my bench cleaned up, ready to TIG weld. I've also started mocking up the exhaust, so you can see here, the exhaust is sitting more or less where it needs to be. It's pretty tricky because I actually don't have much stainless, but working with these pie cuts I cut the other day, that's all the 3-inch I have. That's the old exhaust. I reckon I'm going to be quite tight for materials. If I don't make it, I don't make it, but it's quite interesting. I'm just setting this up now. As you can see, that's how it's going to sit. You can still see the weld through that exhaust, but that's alright. Once it's running, it'll be fine. But I'm hoping it looks alright. It's quite neat. Like, you can actually see, maybe not on camera, but yeah, you know, like the etching on the actual muffler itself. That's kind of neat. So I'm trying to match the angle. I'm trying to compromise between basically having it not stick too far out, but also matching the kind of angle of the body line, because the old exhaust actually hung kind of down, if that makes sense. So this one I'm trying to kind of keep at a level that matches the rest of the kind of sill, or the frame, I guess, you know, trying to keep that parallel. So one thing I did notice is that this exhaust will sit pretty low, so I'm kind of expecting to smash it up a little bit, but you know, it's one of those things that, like, there's so little to lose with this. I paid peanuts for it, and you know, once it's in, if it sounds good, like, fuck, awesome. If it doesn't, you know, sell it off. Someone else will appreciate it as well. So, and it's a functional muffler, and that's the main thing. So the fact that you can actually see straight through now is actually, you know, that's pretty impressive to me. So yeah, we'll see how we go, and hopefully it sits pretty well. It's been probably a few hours now, to be honest. It's dark. This is one of the most tedious parts, especially when you're with pie cuts. Like, you don't want to really have to fuck around with this if you don't have to, or you can actually get bends, or you can be bothered going through that process. But what we're at here, actually where we're at now, so it's been cut, taped up. I'm gonna just basically pull this apart one by one. I've already started at the front, just clean up the edges, tack weld each of these, and then just refit to see how it goes. At the moment, the muffler actually sits slightly to this side, slightly off to the side, but I'm pretty sure I've just kicked that through the way, because I've fitted it up and it actually shifts the muffler across about an inch. So I'm hoping that actually works out pretty well. This is what I kind of got to work with under there. The muffler does look like it sits low, but I'm pretty sure that this will be fine. Like, this is kind of, like I said before, like, that's kind of where the muffler is at, kind of when you're looking at it from head on. So this is where I'm laid up to now at the moment. Finished all the bends for the pie cuts. There's a bit of a fuck around, but got there in the end, and it's actually turned out pretty well. I'm going to need to tweak this side. I'll probably MIG weld this onto the flange, just because the way the gaps are, it's not probably good enough for TIG. But yeah, it's all tacked up so far. I've got the muffler sitting where it needs to be, so I'm just kind of in the process of cleaning it up the inside.
Once that's done, this should be good to go. So it's been a little while. In terms of updates, like probably about 1 week. I went to Perth for work and a few other things, so haven't really been keeping up with this sort of thing. But basically, right when the good stuff was happening, when I was actually welding, I didn't record any of it. So I got it tacked up. I showed you that before, and now it's fully welded. It's on the car. I got it on there, put the hangers on there. So let's have a look. So I've just pulled in. So you can see that's the exhaust sitting on the car. You're gonna not get a really good view through this, but let's actually have a look at how it's been done. Still really needs to be cleaned up properly, but yeah, you can kind of see the edging. Yeah, it's been TIG welded. So all the pies, as you can see, it's really satisfying to see this from the actual back of the car. The flange itself has been MIG welded, and so it has also been MIG welded on that muffler side too. It does sit pretty low, so hangers there in MIG welded as well. Basically what happened was I actually had this mocked up on the car, but as you can see, all the scratches and the Jasmine badging, it's straight now. Before, what it was basically clocked about 10 degrees off, so seeing like this is really satisfying. And classic SR, like I've only ran it like maybe 3 times and you can't even see through the exhaust snake, and maybe just see, but it's doing what it needs to do, you know, like it's getting some use out of it. So you can actually kind of see the rust there. This actually has sat for a little while in the rain. I'm hoping like once it runs through a little bit it'll be a bit better, but yeah, that's it there. Stainless running back. Keep the flash on so you might be able to see a better view of the backside. There you go. So yeah, pretty happy with that, to be honest. Just gotta wait on the kind of see how I feel maybe in a week or two. Might not like it, might like it, we'll see. I'm very happy with how it looks. I really do like the idea of singles on a S15. I just think they suit really well. And that's a rear profile now with the tri-spokes and the super dragger. Just looks mint. I'm like really happy with that. Can't really see much on the actual phone because of the sun, but yeah, pretty stoked. Get your sound clip, maybe a drive, so we go.